Welcome, everybody. We're so thrilled to be in conversation with Adele Parks today. Adele is with us, so that's very exciting. Adele, I'll ask you to come on.
Yay, hello. It's always a bizarre moment, isn't it?
Great entrance.
Yes, all singing, all dancing.
So, Adele, I have so many questions for you. We're also going to take questions from our audience. So ladies, just to do a little bit of admin before we kick off, if you do have a question for Adele, you're absolutely welcome to ask it live. That's always the most engaging. But if you want to just pop it into the chat window, then I'll make sure that I ask Adele. And please feel free to comment in the chat window. If you can just pop in there right now where you're calling in from, it's always interesting to find out where everybody is based. This is in a GMT time zone after work on Thursday. So we expect, oh, Vancouver, there you go. We expect to have some Brits with us and some European folks gathered today. So that is wonderful. So Adele, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
You know what? I'm going to let you introduce yourself and how you got into writing at the same time, if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay. So I'm Adele Parks. I am the author of 21 Times Top 10 bestsellers. So if you're not in the UK, that's like being a New York bestseller, New York list on the New York Times list. It's the Sunday Times list. It's the one to be on. So it's very nice. I've written 21 novels in 21 years, but I also write short stories and articles and other bits and pieces, not as my day job. That's really usually to sort of support launches. If somebody thinks I've written I've written a novel about something topical, they might ask me to write a journalistic piece. So I do a bit of that. I actually, 21 years ago, it's literally a generation ago. I mean, it is so irrelevant how I got into writing, to be honest with you. Quite a lot of people say, tell me how you got into writing, it might help. And I'm like, yeah, it won't, because this entire story is about paper copies, doing research through real life books, and receiving the offer over a live telephone with an answering machine message. All of those things are obsolete, but I will tell you anyway, because it's a bit of fun. So I had always wanted to be a writer. I dreamed of it since being a little girl. But like many of us, you sort of forget your dreams when you become an adult because you get on with adulting. And indeed, I was working in a really great job for a management consultancy company in their marketing department, based in the UK, but a lot of my time in Chicago as well, because it's Accenture and their headquarters is Chicago. I loved my job. But very tragically, in my in my late 20s, there was a period of my life that went really badly wrong. We had a number of family and friends that we lost in a very, very short period, and there were other upsets in my life. So I went to a therapist and said, I don't think I will ever be happy again. Just can't see it. Don't trust the world. Don't like it. And I, just not fully involved. And she laughed and said, you've been coming for a few weeks now, and wherever you come, you crack jokes. So I very much doubt you're not going to be happy again. But what you do need is to control your own happiness more. And actually, it was a hugely brilliant tip that I would love to pass on to other people, because she suggested to me that I spend more time doing something that I personally could completely control, quite a small thing, whether that's gardening, baking cakes, having a hobby, a sport, something like that, but something that I could control that would bring me happiness. And I then kind of quietly, rather shyly confessed, well, I do this scribbling. I'm quite keen on, so what do you mean scribbling? I said, well, I'm quite keen on writing. I used to want to be a writer. And then I sort of pulled out of my bag this notebook that was stuffed with my ideas and thoughts that I constantly jotted down while I was out and about in my day life. And she said, do you have many of those, Adele? And I said, oh yeah, there's a big pile of them back at my house, maybe, I don't know, 12 of these books. And she said, yeah, that might be more than a little hobby, go and do more of that. And I'm quite the girly swat. I have got a very big work ethic, and I'm slash a bit of a workaholic, I think. So I went away and just did myself a project plan, very much based on the kind of Accenture management consultant project plan of how to write a best-selling novel. With all like critical timelines and how I would do my research and how I would research my market and how I would pitch this book and who I would pitch it to and all this kind of thing. And I just set about doing it. And it took me 18 months to write that first novel. And yeah, find myself an agent. And I got really lucky. I had a brilliant agent, and I had done the research and I had done the pitching. And I got pitched to 6 publishing houses, and all 6 accepted the manuscript. And so then had a bidding war against one another. And that's when the telephones were involved, and the answering machines and all the incredibly old-fashioned, very slow things that were really good fun. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. So oddly, a really terrible time of my life led to the beginning of my, the best part of my life, actually, the most important, the most fulfilling part of my life, which I think can happen to all of us, and if we're open to it.
I feel like therapy is something that, I mean, it's getting better, but obviously people don't admit openly all the time that they seek out therapy. And especially like that was a long time ago. So I'm sure at that time it was even more sort
unheard of. Unheard
of.
of. And I used to say, and this will make you laugh, all the sort of North Americans on the call, I used to say, I know it's very American, but they're ahead of us in a lot of things to kind of justify it. Because we only, in Britain at that time, we only knew, the only people who were in therapy were characters in Woody Allen films. So, it was literally the most surprising thing. But I lived in London, and my family were like 250 miles away, and they all were dealing with the same stuff I was dealing with anyhow. So nobody had the space to look after me. And I was, very young at the time. And so I'm very pro professional help. I didn't want to overburden my friends as well, because we were all very young and none of them could understand what I was going through, because most people hadn't lost anybody, let alone, well, I don't know, there was about a dozen people in as many months. So it was absolutely an extraordinarily peculiar time, and I couldn't really ask for that of other people, but a therapist worked. Yeah.
Well,
so I do openly admit it because it helped me, and I hope it helps the people. It might give them an idea that they can reach out for help.
And I don't know if it was a he or she, but I love that they I love that they gave you such good advice.
Yes, it was a she, and she was quite a bit older than me, and I quite liked that about her. She was like a surrogate mum, and she did give me this quite mumsy advice, really, isn't it? Go and do more of what you love. Yeah. It's really simple, but clearly effective.
That's great. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right. So, ladies, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat window, or you can raise your hand and you can ask them live. So Adele, when we hit your site, there's a line that says 21 books in 21 years. And that's obviously a major achievement. How hard was that to do? And did it get any easier as you went on?
Some aspects got easier, and some aspects got incredibly hard. They got harder. Yeah, definitely. So when I started, I just wanted to write this book, and I don't think I thought beyond writing one book until I was in these pitch meetings I just mentioned, where 6 publishers had offered. So then they get you to meet them, and it was all a sort of whirlwind. And what I remember quite early on, sort of, I think the first meeting, somebody said, have you any other ideas? Which is a really clever thing for them to ask me. And just seat of my pants, I said, oh, actually, I have been thinking about this other book. And then I pitched it to them, and they said, oh, okay, any other ideas? I thought, ooh. And so I do have a third, and I gave them that, and they went, okay, fine. And I think they were just checking that I wasn't going to be a one-hit wonder that had just written about their own experiences. And in fact, I hadn't written about my own experiences, and I'm always rushing to say this to people, because the first book was called Playing Away, and it was about it was a romantic comedy, but with quite a biting edge, because basically it's about a woman who after only a year's marriage has this incredibly hot affair. And at the time, which seems odd now, but at the time it was really shocking because this woman was sort of breaking boundaries. She was refusing to be limited. She was refusing to accept the happily ever after. And she was at times quite unlikable. But I loved playing with her. I loved drawing that character. But many authors, their first novel have huge autobiographical elements. And so I was at pains to point out to people, no, if I had written a murder mystery, would you be digging up under my patio? No, you can write a murder mystery without actually killing someone. So you can write about an affair without actually having an affair. So I think then they were quite kind of convinced that there would be a second and third book. And it was my editor that said to me about 3 books in, well, you need to write a book a year, Adele, so that people wait for you and expect you and know that their summer holiday isn't going to be complete without you, and picking up your book at the airport and reading you on a sun lounger. And it just appealed to me, the idea of popping along on everybody else's holiday with them. And I mentioned I was a girly swat and I like targets. And so I just started writing. I just kept going. I just wrote this book a year. And to put it in context, my son is also 21. I only have one child, but he's 21. And so I wrote this book a year throughout, my pregnancy and my baby's first years and his preschool years. And so to your question, did it get harder? There were some challenges along the way, childcare challenges and balancing your time and making sure that all works. But in many ways, that was also incredibly flexible because I could always work when he'd gone to bed, which if you've got an office job, you can't do. The other thing that got harder, I think, is I do challenge myself. I mention that a lot. And so I started in one genre, but I have written in 4. So I started in romantic comedy and then started writing sort of more relationship dramas. And I don't mean relationships, sort of, romantic relationships. I mean relationships between parents and children and siblings and friendship groups. And those dramas were much more about a theme. So maybe, I don't know, infertility or divorce, or maybe looking after somebody with Alzheimer's or cancer. And there would be like a theme at the center of the book. And then I wrote those for a few years. And then I wrote historical fiction. And I set 2 of my novels, one called Spare Brides and the other called If You Go Away. I set both of those around World War I. And one was about the surplus of women after the war, particularly in Britain. I mean, there was a surplus of women everywhere, but I was particularly struck by a fact I came across, which was the census of Britain just after the World War I discovered that there was 1 million women of marrying age more than men of marrying age. So those women were just spare women as far as the British public thought at the time, because up until that point in history, the role of a woman, particularly in Britain, you can have a really proud moment in North America, because I don't think it was quite the same in Canada or America. But particularly in Britain, if you're a middle class or upper class woman, your role was to marry. And suddenly there were all these extra women and not enough men to go around, so they have to find something else to do. And it was actually the birth of feminism and got us the vote. So it's quite an interesting time. And If You Go Away was a book about conscientious objector. So really quite meaty subjects. And when I finished both of those, and I loved writing those, but when I finished them, I couldn't really go back to a single drama and a single family. It just felt not enough. It didn't feel as though I was doing my duty as a writer, this sort of engaging a community, speaking to what we have in common. And I wanted to do that more. And oddly, I found that was possible through thrillers, which nobody ever expects, because, thrillers are something dreadful that happens to a particular family or a group of people or whatever might be the case. But I think we can all understand the worst case scenario fear, which is what thrillers are about, the worst case scenario fear. And that we do have in common across humanity. And so, yeah, I went dark. I've been quite dark for about 7 or 8 years now. So I think the challenge has been keeping things fresh,
Yeah.
always offering my reader something new. I definitely don't want to be that writer where you kind of go, do you know what? I've read her book before and they're all the same. And we all know there are writers out there. And sometimes that's great. Some readers are looking for that. They maybe only read one book a year and they want the familiarity, but that isn't what I wanted to do. So I think that's been my biggest challenge, coming up with new themes, new characters, new dilemmas, and yet keeping them realistic, relatable.
So actually, Valerie just has a question here for you. She said, is that why you choose to write multiple points of view in your thrillers versus a single drama or family point of view?
It is really, Valerie, because this is really philosophical, but what is truth? We all only have our own truth and our own memory. And that is, facts are facts. 100 grams is, a kilogram, that's fact, But in terms of memory and truth, it's a lot more arbitrary. We all have a viewpoint. So I think one of the jobs of a writer is to increase empathy and to help us. And I think that's why I read, and as I really enjoyed reading as a child and always have, and still enjoy reading now, is to increase my ability to empathize with other people's points of view. And even if I don't agree with somebody else, I would like to hear what they had to say. I think that is the way forward, not cancelling, not silencing. I'm not a fan of either of those things. And so I think multiple viewpoints lends itself to that. It gives, it's easier to do that. Also, it's a great device because it gives such power to the reader, because the reader knows more than any of the characters. And I think that's quite a fun position to be in. And of course, even the reader doesn't know everything, because the whole point of my thrillers is to have twists and turns and reveals that will keep you on the edge of your seat and will keep you turning pages. And so, you won't always know what to expect. And when you have guessed correctly, that's quite satisfying. And when you haven't guessed, then that's quite fun too. But that tends to come with multiple viewpoints. If there's one linear viewpoint, that's not as likely to be achieved.
So now I have so many questions and I don't get to ask my own questions, which is always hard for me.
Come back.
So Amy wants to know, is it hard to decide how many viewpoints is too many? Did you have a narrative or other characters prepared that didn't make the final edit?
No, because I've already decided and planned way in advance exactly who I'm going to include. I'm quite a plotter and planner.
Plotter or a pantser or plotter? Is that what they say?
I'm definitely a plotter. I'm not a pantser. I'm a plotter and planner. And that helps me. I think there does come a point where there can be too many and you lose track. I think for me, 3 or 4 people, it feels quite comfortable. But relatively early on in my career, about my first 2 books were one person point of view. But I think about book 5, I had 8 leads and they had equal number of chapters. And it was a lot of fun to write. It was, I got to pull on other people's clothes and be other people, and that was great. But I think for the reader, if you have 3 or 4, you can decide who you're siding with, who you believe, who you trust, and I think that's true in real life, isn't it? We have 3 or 4 people that we keep very close and we want a bigger cast around us, but we want to keep some people very tight that we very much trust and respect the opinion of.
If my mother was here right now, she would be applauding you because she hates books with tons of characters because she can't keep them track.
Yeah. The Victorians loved it, but they haven't got anything else to do. They could reread books for long hours. They didn't have television and the internet and video games and music in the same way. They had the piano, I suppose. But so things like Charles Dickens has these huge casts of people, doesn't he? And of course, that's a very different point he's trying to make about society. But for my tight, gritty dramas, it is about the impact this sort of tight number of people have on each other, which I hope we can all relate to.
Very good. So I have another question for you, but I want to ask, just before we move away from this, we were talking about genres and how you've gone dark in the last few years. So are there any specific authors that you read personally that have inspired you or that you really like, or do you avoid the genre completely?
I don't avoid it. I get sent a lot of it now. So I, in fact, I probably read more now I'm actually writing it than I did before I started writing it. I went into the genre, this is so naive. I went into the genre, this is not what I would advise, right? But I did it. I went into the genre having probably read 3 thrillers in my entire lifetime. Like I didn't even know. And so I once went to this festival and I remember really clearly this guy saying to me, oh, you don't follow many of the tropes. And I was like, what are they? I would if I knew what they were. And it was quite sort of a comedy moment because it was very clear I was a bit of a fresher in this particular genre. So I think I just write what I want to say, and then it has naturally found its genre. I think publishers find the genre, writers write what they want to say. So the book, oh, I should talk about the book. Hang on, have a moment. Right, so this book, which I keep telling everybody, is the same book. So both of you, if you're in the UK, Woman Last Seen, if you're in North America, same book. Do not buy it twice in 2 different types and then shout at me, because I'm telling you now, it's the same book. So yeah, what I would say about this book is it's about 2 women that go missing. So really, in many ways, it's a sort of two family crisis in crisis. I thought I was writing about families in crisis. I thought I was writing about the profound link that we discover is between these 2 women that I can't tell you because it's such a spoiler. But if I say it myself, possibly my best twist ever, just saying. So worth reading it just to see if I'm bragging or if I'm right on that one. But yes, so I thought I was writing about this twist and this profound link and these families. And it was only when I realized that actually at least one of these women was chained up, because that's where she needed to be when I was planning it. I was like, okay, so she's chained up. So this is now crime. This is a thriller. But it was more that it came from a quite dark domestic place, but a domestic place. I felt I should talk about the book. That's why I just threw that one in.
Okay. Very good. So Leah, sorry, I'm probably saying your name completely wrong. I think it's Leah, but I'm not sure. So her question is, do you have a typical starting point for a book, a particular character, or do you start at the beginning or do you start at the end? Good question for these type of books.
I do, because I plan, I normally start with a spidergram. That is my opening. You know, one of those things where you put like the name of the character in the middle and then you've got sort of spiders going off, legs going off. And then you might say, oh, she's married to this one. She has these kids. These are her secrets, these are her friends, these are her lies, and then I sort of build a story around her, and I plot that out for a while, and then that spidergram makes its way into a little bit more of a linear plot, and sort of concurrent with that, I might start interviewing the main characters that I've jotted out on that spidergram, maybe the main 3 or 4, and I want to know everything about them. Obviously, I want to know their gender and their sexual proclivities and their job and how many kids they have. And I obviously want to know those things because that's basic stuff. But I want to know more about them. I want to know, what are their secrets? What lies are they telling? What's the thing they're most ashamed of? What's the thing they're most proud of? And so I have this kind of list of about 100 questions. I don't ask all my characters all 100, but I kind of have a gut feel of which might tell me the most about the character, and I interview them for a wee while. And this process between the plotting and the investigating of the character might take as many as 2-3 months. It's quite thorough. And by then I'm usually itching to write. And by then I'm usually also promoting another book, which I am at that point going, oh, for goodness sake, just read it. I'm on to the next one. But you can't say that, you know, so I have to kind of concentrate. And this is all quite a good part of the process, because it means when I am finally allowed to sit at my desk and actually write, it just flows. And the voices come and the people are there and they're with me because I've got to know them and I'm quite comfortable with them. And I get to the end of a chapter and I look at my plot and I think, okay, I know where my next chapter starts, and off I go. Now, obviously, because I'm not a robot, some of those chapters, there's a level of flexibility in them, and something comes a bit to me and I think, I didn't think about that, or a character is proving to be incredibly fun and interesting. I think, I might just give that one a bit more voice, and that's good to play with. So there is a level of flexibility. I'm not sort of incredibly rigid, but I do always know where I will end up. And so, yeah, I am quite disciplined. I do have a routine. It does start with a voice, with a character. It starts with a plot. It usually starts with a plot. I think I'm going to then go, or a theme. It depends. Over the 21 years, they've started with character, plot, or theme, but they're nearly all simultaneously developed.
Well, I mean, clearly you know what you're doing. So whatever you're doing is working.
I know. Sometimes when I start to think about it and pick it apart like this, I really panic and think, don't lose the magic. Don't lose the magic by talking about it. But anyway, that is what I do.
Well, so this book is out in the UK, but it's not, this is the North American title, right?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
It's like, which copy do I have? So this is the North American title for anybody who's watching this back from North America, or those of you that are here from North America. But it is called Both of You in the UK, and it has been released. I thought an interesting way for you to tell us a little bit about this, obviously without any spoilers, is maybe to tell us about one of the characters from the book, if that's possible.
Yes, I can. So I can tell you about, so the leads are these two women that have disappeared. So one of them is Lee. She is, no, I've just told you I work for a management consultancy, so this is also going to seem weird. But I was in the marketing department. She works for a management consultancy and she is a management consultant. So she's also a mum, stepmom to two young, like tween-age boys. And she's been their stepmom since they were little, sort of 2 and 5 year olds. She's the only mum they've ever known. Their first mum died. So she's a devoted mother and wife. She's hardworking. She balances her career. She's often away from home. She's very, very busy. She has a really great friendship with a woman called Fiona. And I think you'll relate to her. Many of us will relate to her and like her and bounce along with her. So we actually meet her through her husband and child or children first, because we meet her, find out she's already gone missing and that this is completely out of character. Then we have Lee, the other lead female. Now, Lee has a life that, sadly, not many of us do lead, but I think many of us would quite like to. She's kind of, so she's married to a very, very wealthy man. He's a little bit younger than her. He's old money. He's got a very established family. They live in a beautiful penthouse luxury apartment in London. They've opted to stay child-free, and she doesn't have a career, but she does have an elderly, ill mother who she looks after, sort of spends half a week up in the north of England looking after her. So she's not spoiled. She's not, irresponsible. She has got responsibilities, but she definitely sort of mixes with the great and the good. But she actually also goes missing in the same week as Kai. And the detective, female detective in charge of the case, they shouldn't really be connected, these two women. And actually, there shouldn't be too much emphasis on two women going missing, because really sadly, people go missing all the time. I mean, the research, when I was doing the research for this book, it's utterly heartbreaking how many people just vanish, they walk out of their homes and they're gone. I think we hear the ones that hit the news are the people that were taken. Some people aren't taken. Some people run away from something. Some people run towards something. And this book is first asking that, have these women run away, run towards, or have they indeed been taken? And then we discover somebody is tied up to a radiator in an empty room, chained up. So they're clearly not there through choice. And then we need to work out, who took this person. And there is a profound link between the women that the detective is convinced of and uncovers. And it's devastating for both families. It really rocks the boat and also asks more questions than it answers. I think that's spoiler free.
I know, but I feel
You
like
know what happens.
I feel like everybody is going. I think that was brilliant, and I think everybody's going to have to pick up a copy now. So yes, this Valerie has a question here, and this is a brilliant question because something we can't not cover is, can you share your thoughts on the two titles and cover versions for the UK, both of you, in North America, Women Last Seen? What are your thoughts as the author on different book titles based on different markets, and which do you prefer better?
Okay, I know it's going to be a headache, is my first thought. I would have loved to live in a perfect world where the same title crossed over the channel comfortably. It did. It has been all.
Is this the first time that you've had a book with?
Second in my entire career. So my third book that I ever wrote was called Larger Than Life in the UK. Is that right? And it was called Other Women's Shoes in the UK, and it was called Lust for Life in America, because there was a book called something similar to The Other Women's Shoes. But that was really confusing because it was called Lust for Life. And in the UK, I had another book coming straight out called Larger Than Life. Oh. So it was bedlam because people kept buying the book and saying, oh, I thought it was a new book. Or people would say, no, I've got that book. And it's like, no, you haven't. This one is the new book. So to the question, so I'm very lucky that I am translated into 31 languages across the globe.
Amazing.
Very nice. I don't know what they are. I wish I was that talented. I am literally, not a person who can speak 31 languages. So I sometimes look at other books and I translate them in my little pidgin English, or I go to Google Translate and I find out that a book called, I don't know, I'm making this up, both of you might have been called You Two Together in another country. And that doesn't bother me because I think, well, yeah, they've translated it. It's their choice. It's their market. So I think it would be hypocritical of me to be cross if an English-speaking market had the same prerogative. And of course, there is that same prerogative. My publishers in North America want to do the best by me in that market. And I don't know the background. I don't know if it's because there's another title out that's similar to both of you, or if both of you doesn't really fit in with the thriller market in the States, if it doesn't seem very thriller-ish. Mm-hmm. So Woman Last Seen was the title they came up with. And they did sort of offer me several titles, and they didn't just kind of throw it at me and say, this is a done deal. We discussed it. But I have the confidence in their decisions that they know their market better than I do because they're there on the ground. So I'm happy to be led by their decisions to find me the most readers possible in North America. So that's the right decision for North America. It is very confusing for people already in the UK because we often look to North America for our entertainment. We have your TV shows and your films, and so there's a lot of my fans now going, oh, you've got a new book out in North America and it's called Woman Last Seen. And we're like, no, that's the book you've already got. It's don't buy that one. Because I don't want to make my readers cross. I don't want people to, shed out hard-earned cash and then feel furious that they've had the book twice. Although they could always give it to a friend. But that's what I want to avoid. But I'm very comfortable and confident in the American market doing what they need to do. And just have another flash. I love this cover for this reason alone. This is a brilliant cover. Isn't that the best? I just spend so much time doing that. Can you all please do that with your copy and send me pictures? Because I love it. I'm just going to walk around. Although my publicist did say to me, you can't see the title or the name when you do that. And I'm like, I don't care. It's fun. But I do care. Of course, we need to know the name. But yeah, I think this is a really brilliant cover. I was consulted on it. Now, the British cover, both of you, I micromanage in a way that would drive you mad if you weren't on my doorstep. I micromanage because I'm really, all over the British market. And I do know, that quote will be really effective here. And so my quotes are from Richard Osman and Lisa Jewell. And in the UK, Richard Osman's been the #1 bestseller for, I think, something like 45 weeks in the charts, in the UK charts. So clearly an endorsement for him is really important to me. And Lisa Jewell, I know you know really well, because I know she's topped your charts.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Lisa, I don't know, maybe you know Richard really well too. But you see, I don't know, that's my whole point. Whereas I absolutely know that's the case in England, and I can in the UK generally, and I can say, oh, well, my brand is like this and the typeface ought to be that. And so I'm a little bit more involved.
No, that's great. I'm sure they enjoy the involvement.
They haven't told me to shut up yet.
Well, I think that
we have a great team.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I mean, I'm pretty straightforward. I know when I'm outsmarted, and when people know more than me. And I think that's a great gift in life, knowing how much you do or don't know. And so I am willing to take on advice, and I think they probably appreciate that. And I think they also know I have a marketing background, so they're quite willing to listen to me. It's a great relationship.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay, so this is more of a personal question, actually, but you moved between, you've lived all over the world, including Italy, Botswana, and London. You now reside in Guildford, which is just outside of London. Can you tell us what took you to these wonderful places?
I can. So Italy was a whim. I was very young, and I loved the author Ian Foster, who wrote things like Where Angels Fear to Tread and A Room with a View. And they were often set in Italy. And because I mentioned I wanted to be a writer, I remember graduating from university and thinking, I have no idea what I want to do next. But maybe if I go to Italy, something profoundly fantastic will happen to me. And I'll be able to write it up like Ian Foster. Now, can I tell you, the arrogance of that thought is astounding. But of course, when you're that young, it's not really arrogant. It's just youthful happiness, excitement, possibility, all those things. And so I bounced across to Italy, and I trained as a TEFL teacher, teaching English as a foreign language, and then bounced across to Italy and did that for a period of time, which was hugely rewarding and great fun. But I did not write the great novel. And then came back to the UK, lived and worked in London, which was the obvious choice in advertising. And then had an opportunity to move to Botswana and help set up an advertising agency that was an affiliate of Saatchi & Saatchi's. Wow. In those days, the agency I helped set up was called Horizon. I was quite young. I was only 25, 26 at that, 25 at that point. And so it just seemed like an adventure, and it really was. I mean, I had clients. I remember having to kind of ring clients and say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I can't get to you. There's an elephant on the road, which is an absolutely normal, usual thing. And I got home after a few years there. I came back again to London, and I kind of, trains would be stopped and they'd say, oh, there's leaves on the track. And I'd be like, leaves. Don't talk to me about leaves. It's not an elephant, is it? Can't you go round the leaves? Of course you can't. But yeah, it was great. Then I started working for Accenture, and I did a lot of travel within that job. So whilst I was based in the UK, I spent a lot of time in the States. I looked after Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India as my marketing region. So I was always on a plane and in other countries, and I loved it. I think that's been the hardest thing for me and for so many of us, because of the pandemic. I've done, very little travel at all, and I miss it. But then I had my baby, and as much as I love moving around and traveling, I didn't think it was fair to do that with his schooling. Just my choice. Some people think it's actually the best way to school a child, and that's great, and that's their choice too. So we stayed in the UK, although we spent every summer somewhere. So we quite often would take we have a 6-week holiday in the summer, and we would take that and go and travel and plonk ourselves in another country. And I think it really worked, because my son is currently in Siberia. So he definitely got the travel bug.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he's studying in Russia. He's just had 6 months studying in Russia. He's currently just completing the Trans-Siberian Railway as we speak. He comes home to me tomorrow,
Oh my
And then on Sunday, he sets off to Spain, does another 6 months in Spain. So I think I did teach him that, that, you know, the world is his oyster.
That's brilliant.
I'm
Wow.
proud.
Yeah, as you should be. I think just to sum up, or just to finish off our interview here, we have one more question for you. And it's really about, you are in London. Guildford is just outside. So what's it like being such a big literary name in a hub like London? And if you could answer that from sort of a pre and post-pandemic view.
Yeah, I mean, I look back and realize how spoilt we were pre-pandemic. I mean, the great thing about being in Guildford, it's about 30 minutes outside London. So you can quickly get a train in and you can do events and attend other people's events and parties. You know, there was like, I don't know, I remember getting to the stage going, oh, another launch, can I be bothered? Now I would be like, hey, a party, I'm going, you know. But there was literally, I suppose there could have been, if I wanted to attend them all, there were 3 or 4 parties a week. There were definitely galleries and you know, there was lots of art and readings and festivals that were amazing to be part of and perform at, and also, as I say, to attend and to learn from. But yeah, they've all had a little bit of a break, let's put it that way. I'm sorry, I'm just dismissing something from my screen in case anyone takes the screen grab. You don't want to see that. So yeah, they all took a beating and they just stopped. But on the other hand, the really marvelous thing is we have developed this technology that very comfortably, very easily, I can speak to people all over the world from my office, you know, and that's a great thing. And maybe that wouldn't have happened pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I was literally on my way out to the States. The plan was to come out, I think, April, and we were told to lock down in the March. And I kept thinking, oh yeah, but it'd be over, won't it? And then after about a few days, oh no, it clearly isn't going to be over. So yeah, but as for being a big literary name, do you know what? I don't know if I am. I mean, I know on paper I am. I know I am. I know my name is, my face really isn't. So I can wander around, but you know, we call it a town. It's not a town, it's obviously a city, but the thing Brits do about London, we call it London town. So we can wander around the town and nobody would bat an eyelid or know who I was. It is true when I maybe do a booking or give my name, I am now getting to a very nice stage in life where I can get a table somewhere. And this might not mean anything to anybody in North America, but I think it will mean something to anybody listening from the UK. In the new year, the Queen always kind of honors people, gives a handful of people these sort of, literal, they're called honors, to sort of recognize the work they've done for going above and beyond. And I got an MBE this year. And to put it in context, there's only been sort of, over the last 5 years, there have only been 6 adult writers that have got an honours on the Queen's New Year's honours list out of all the tens of thousands of writers that there are. And so that was mind-blowing and really, really huge. I get a coat of arms. I mean, it's a big deal. My son can get married at St. Paul Cathedral. It's a huge deal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, a really big fun thing.
So cool.
And it came from nowhere. And I think that now feels London is so mine. You know, I really feel I belong. And I've lived in London for many, many years. And when I moved to Guildford, I was sad to leave it. And now I kind of wander around thinking, well, I've got an MBE, so kind of London's mine again, you know, so that's great. So that's a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for that little tidbit.
Well, I don't know. It sounds really vain, but it is actually also just a fact, and it's a fun thing. I love the fact I'm going to get a coat of arms. We don't know what to do with it, because what to do with a coat of arms? Now we are not going into battle, thank goodness, anymore. I have suggested to my husband, he has it tattooed on him somewhere.
There you go.
Not really. I don't think the Queen would like it, but we don't know quite what to do with this coat of arms. I think I'll have to have a piece of art maybe and put it here behind me, so every time I'm on a Zoom, people can see it.
There you go. Just very quickly before we wrap up, can you just tell us, I mean, you were just talking about how you're promoting this book now, but you've probably already written another book. So can you tell us what's coming up?
Yes, so I've got another book which is called in the UK, and I think it's staying with this title across the globe. One Last Secret, and I like writing about women who really flex their muscles in terms of non-conformity and pushing the boundaries and the limits that are foisted upon us through society and expectations and history and ourselves and each other. And so I'm writing about an escort. Yeah, so I think that's going to be a bit of a dividing one. I think she's incredibly sympathetic and she's really interesting, but she is an escort, and so there's going to be some very difficult conversations around what's being paid for there. And yeah, and she gets herself into a lot of trouble because, generally it's a high risk job. And so it's another very dark, twisty, turny psychological thriller. It is set in the south of France, though, which is so glamorous, and a really lovely dollop of escapism, because I think we're all, as I say, itching to travel. So I just thought, let's set it somewhere fabulous. And I have spent quite a lot of time. I mentioned the sort of 6-week periods that we have away, and we had a home in the south of France, and so we spent a lot of time in the south of France, so I know it quite well. So that was lovely during lockdown, writing, transporting myself.
Amazing. Well, we'll keep our eye out for that. And this comes out February 1st in North America?
Yes, very soon.
Exciting. So everybody, make sure you pick up your copy. For the UK viewers, both of you, is already out. So you can grab a copy. I actually think if you're in North America, you can probably order it on Book Depository already and have it shipped across the pond.
Yes, but it would probably, if you're across the pond, it would be much more beneficial for the planet to choose the local one.
Fair enough. And February 1st is a week or 4 days away. So I think we can
exactly
wait. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and a massive, massive thank you, Adele, for joining us. It's been.
Can I echo that? Thank you for all the work you've put into this interview, and thank you for everybody for joining it. Otherwise it'd be just me talking to myself. So I really appreciate it and appreciate the invite. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Take care. Goodbye now.